Hello traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com on Sunday, October the 4th, 2015. In this video we're going to cover the indices, which we saw SPX plus 1.4% on the week, NASDAQ 100 plus 1.01%, IWM for the week was down slightly but had a nice day on Friday, and the New York Stock Exchange Composite had made a lower low. Compare the closing candles on the 24th of August compared to last week, but it closed plus 1.18% nonetheless. Tick and Tick Q, we see cumulative rising. We have NYSE, we have a bullish cross, positive breath. NAMO hasn't quite yet turned and crossed on the NASI. However, trend was at lows at the end of the week. So we had a nice positive trade on Friday. Breadth, accumulation days are adding up. We only saw 5 to 1 and 8 to 1 last week on Wednesday and Friday. CPC, I believe this is correct. We're near a bounce zone for equities. Obviously we're bouncing, but we had 1.21, I believe, during the day. Currencies, US dollar is plus 4.12%. Yen was up as well. If you're bullish equities, you want to see yen continue to move lower. The Australian dollar versus US was plus 0.35%. We'll go over why that's important. Commodities and bonds both were up as well. We saw crude oil higher by 1.42% on the day and weekly plus 0.71%. TLT was higher by plus 2.7%. We'll look at sector rotation. XLB is starting to look very good, and I don't think many traders are paying attention to it. Here is the SPY daily chart, and the things we're focusing on here was the Morningstar Doji pattern that Ms. Kara correctly pointed out. I would have liked to see a larger candle here on Wednesday, but we do have a pattern. Volume by price resistance that was met on Thursday, this Dragonfly Doji. We hit the 192.30 area that we pointed out repeatedly during the week as resistance overhead. We broke through that level on Friday, also through the 10 EMA, the 20, and the 30 EMA. So we're watching for the 10 EMA to turn back up. The 20 has crossed as well. We have an overhead resistance that goes back to this high here on the 17th, and this level here, this wick on Fed Day 3 weeks ago Thursday, and resistance in that zone. We have a Kirby level up above if prices move above this level, and managed to make it through 198. We have clear, easy going for the most part up to around 205.50. Slow Stow, however, is approaching the red zone. Note this is the 5-1, so 14-1 will look slightly different. MACD is crossing its signal line. We have a positive histogram. And as we mentioned, tick cumulative is moving higher. So this all looks pretty bullish for the week, at least as it applies to the beginning of the week. We could see a little bit more resistance in here. That's left to be seen. The second scenario is the prices could flag out here, meet this trend line, and then break higher, consolidate. And of course, the third scenario is that we're rejected here and we move back down to this trend line. That's all possible and things that we'll be watching for this week. Here's a chart of the NASDAQ 100. We are looking at these higher lows, price moving through the 10 EMA. The Bollinger Bands are quite light, but you can see that the upper Bollinger Band is north of the 200 period moving average. We would expect to see some resistance if price made it back up to 43.75 or so. The 200 is currently at 43.84.12. So this zone right in here is clearly where we would expect to see some resistance and previous support in this area along here that was lost. We also have volume by price overhead, and MACD is turning up. That's bullish. Slow Stow is turning up, and the number of stocks trading below above their 50 period moving average has moved to 31% now. off of these extreme lows we pointed out a couple of weeks ago and are moving higher. So this is all bullish. Above average volume is looking pretty good. All in all, the NASDAQ looks pretty good as well. Remember, NASI has yet to cross, so we're watching NAMO and NASI for the NASDAQ 100. Looking at the Russell, we are looking a little bit weaker here. We had a lower low than the August 24th low, bouncing off the lower Bollinger Band. Slow stows turning higher, MACD's crossing above its signal line, and we have a positive histogram. We have this level here that was support back in November, December, January of 2015, and we'll probably see resistance there again with a downtrending 50-period moving average. So we're looking at levels, the 10 EMA, the 20, and the 50 overhead for IWM. If you're trading this, had a nice week for the most part from Wednesday on, so keep that in mind if you're trading IWM or RUT this week. Here's the New York Stock Exchange composite of 2,000 stocks. We had this broadening pattern that broke down on August 24th, obviously. We consolidated, moved higher, built this volume by price level. Prices above the 10 EMA, we made this lower low as it's compared to the closing lows. Slow stows turning back up. High low is at an extreme level, and we are anticipating that's going to turn back up as well. So we're watching the NYA as well as the S&P 500, the S&P 1500 new highs, new lows percent, which this indicates we are still on a sell signal. We want to see a shorter histogram bar this week. Note that we were making progressively lower histogram bars. This means that the new highs minus new lows percent is continuing to move lower, so we want to see that trend change. So that'll be confirmation for the week if this turns back up. So keep an eye on it. And of course, the last thing we want to check is the S&P 500 on the monthly basis. Note Stowe is continuing to move lower, MACD as well. We want to see shorter histogram bars in the month of October starting to build. And we want to see this pattern that's holding right here at the lower Bollinger Band start to move higher if you're bullish. Note that we have overhead resistance at the 2000 level with these moving averages. So just keep that in mind on a monthly basis as well as you're trading this week. The S&P 500 weekly chart, bond stock ratio, this is starting to change inflection and possibly turning back down. Note that the way we trade this is we want to trade the extremes. We want to be short here and long up here once we see a confirmation that we may be changing trend. So watch for this 65 MA to flatten out some more, and for this lower high to hold, and for the indicator to turn back down. This is the ratio between the 10-year and the S&P 500. A very good indicator for trading long and short when these weekly indicators turn. Tick cumulative, as we mentioned, is turning back up. We have this little cup pattern for the most part. We have a crossover with the S&P 500 bouncing off the lower Bollinger Band right through the 20-period moving average. And of course, we were talking about NIMO and how low trend was during the second half of the week. TICQ is also turning back up, very similar pattern. The NASDAQ composite off the lower Bollinger Band has yet to meet the 20-period moving average, but this is looking pretty good as well, at least as far as a follow-through and possibly a flag here and then a move higher, as one or two scenarios might play out either way, or a rejection at the 20 MA. NAMO, as we pointed out for the NASDAQ McClellan oscillator, moving positive last week, 3.64. Price action on the Index 100 continues to move higher, and we have yet to see a crossover to the upside on the summation index like we have on the NYSE, which if we look at that, NIMO is sharply higher at 20.84, and we have a crossover on the summation index. All bullish for the week. VIX is also looking more bullish as we come off of the levels here of extremes in the green zone. We continue to move lower. We'll be watching VIX this week as well. VIX BXV risk event indicator, the risk reward here is starting to get towards the bearish camp. We have a ways to go yet. We've dropped through 0.95 and drifting lower. If we get below 0.90, we'll start watching for a top, a short-term top. We haven't seen that yet. Possibly we'll hit that at the 50-period moving average overhead. Note the advanced decline on all common stocks is moving higher, as well as the New York Stock Exchange Composite. That's looking pretty good. Continues to look bullish for stocks presently. CPC is also headed towards the green zone. It had hit a level at 1.21, I believe, and we want to see that stay up here and move lower to further confirm a bullish bounce. The US dollar continues to move sideways, so we want to keep an eye on that, as well as bonds. The daily was looking pretty bullish last week. We gapped up and moved a little bit lower. The weekly looks alright as well. We have bond positions. We're at the upper Bollinger Band. We could see price consolidate in this area, so we're watching bonds as we moved higher and then came back down to just below the 20-period moving average and back above the 50 and back above the moving averages now. So we're watching TLT as well. As it bounces off of these volume by price bars, things are looking fairly bullish, so we want to keep an eye on this as a contrarian view to the S&P. If we want to be bullish equities, we want to see bonds taper off a little bit, maybe consolidate a little bit, and let equities do its thing for a few days. If we're bearish equities, we want to see TLT continue to move higher this week. Junk bonds continue to move lower. Risk off as it relates to the energy sector and a lot of the smaller shale companies that are probably defaulting, and this is a reflection of that. I think somewhere around 25 to 30% of junk bonds out there relate to the energy and shale sector. Commodities, we're seeing copper starting to move off of this double bottom, moving higher. Watch the Australian dollar to US dollar forex pair, because you want to see the Australian dollar confirm the move higher in commodities. We saw George Soros and a couple of other major investors buying commodities down here at a discount. Looking at WTIC crude, still moving sideways here, consolidating along this volume by price congestion level and looking for prices to move higher. Remember, Goldman Sachs had a $20 target on crude oil per barrel, so we're watching how this plays out and see if their call is correct or incorrect. MACD remains above the zero line and slow stow's turning back up. Gold is looking bullish. We have higher lows continuing to play out. We're still tight Bollinger Bands for the most part and do have volume by price resistance overhead around 1180 thereabouts up to about 1210. We need a catalyst for prices to catapult above this level. Aside from the fact that we're putting in higher lows, gold is looking pretty good. MACD is above the zero line, slow stow's turning back up, and we see decent volume. Looking at the sectors for a moment, we're noticing that XLB had a nice turn higher. We had this double bottom. We'll be looking at this sector mostly for setups this week. We're watching money rotating at the end of the quarter, third quarter, into commodity related stocks as well as materials sector that are seeing buying at a discount now from these levels early in the year at 51.26, currently seeing buying volume at 39. So watch XLB among others, such as the energy sector, which is seeing a higher low, double bottom. We have this trend line overhead, this moving average overhead, but note the strength of the S&P 500 starting to turn back up after moving sideways and consolidating over the last few weeks. Remember, we were long and looking at some trades here. We were since stopped out with a nice profit, but we had this pullback, higher low, and now we're starting to see an attack of the 50-period moving average again. XLI, we're also watching for this to turn back up this week. Looking at for shorts, XLF is turned down dramatically. Biotech, no surprise after a huge move down on the Hillary tweet. We're seeing some discounts to value being bought up and prices moving higher. Note the strength to the S&P 500 is moving higher as well. XLP, the defensive sectors saw some selling last week, although we had nice price action here. Strength to the S&P 500 is moving lower. Same thing with XLU. XLV, healthcare, nice little move higher. These are the sectors that can possibly push the S&P 500 higher. So keep an eye on these. Relative strength to the S&P 500. Healthcare made a nice bottom along with biotech and continues to show relative strength. XLY, discretionary, continues to move higher throughout the year. We had this little pullback, got a triangle pattern attacking the 50-period moving average overhead, and we have these higher or lower highs that we have to deal with. If we break above that, that could be a good sign for XLY. So watch all of these sectors for possible setups that we mentioned herein. We are looking at the materials sector for possible setups this week. Given the strength to the S&P 500 that we showed on the sectors, when the 10 EMA is below the 30, obviously we stay short, but we can see on Alcoa, which reports in the near future, has changed trend. The 10 EMA is now above the 30, and we're looking for price action to move higher. If we look at the Ichimoku version of this chart, that price action is changing trend. We have Chiku above price, and we're looking for price to break above Kumo and remain bullish. MACD is about to surface above the zero line and stay there. It's trying to stay above its signal line, and slow still continues to move higher. So we're looking for bullish action in the materials sector this week. An inexpensive name in this group is Cliff Natural Resources. Note the double bottom. We have overhead resistance up here around $4.50 at previous highs. We're trying to change trend and just draw some trend lines through here. Keep an eye on Cliffs. We're watching slow stow and MACD trying to set up as well, and this additional name in the materials sector. Dow Chemical is also looking good. The 10 EMA is trying to get back above the 30 EMA. Note the volume by price bars. Huge volume. That's not day traders, that is institutions. Note MACD and slow stow. We'll keep an eye on this one. Also note the Ichimoku chart. We're above the daily Kumo. We have a Kumo twist coming. We have Chiku above price. This is looking fairly bullish. MACD's moving higher and slow stow as well. Nice volume. This looks like a good pick for the week. Obviously, we'd like to see a flag first and a move higher and not chase these. DD, DuPont, we're also looking for the same reasoning. 10 EMA below the 30, trying to turn back up. Once the 10 EMA moves above the 30 EMA, this looks like a good stock to follow. Note the volume by price bar. We have less resistance from this level up to these levels at 64. So watch for trend to change here. The 10 EMA above the 30. MACD move higher, slow stow as well as volume increasing. Freeport-McMoRan showing the same type of setup. Note the volume by price bars as the base is starting to be built. Note price action moving sideways. This is phase 4 here. Phase 1 is when we see basing and institutions start picking up shares, which is quite obvious. Then the 10 EMA stays above the 30 and we start phase 2, as you might have read in the book. LyondellBasell Industries, LYB, this is a Netherlands-based company. Note we have a very clear phase 2, ending with phase 3, then phase 4, markdown. Price is moving sideways now as we base. This is starting phase 1. We get above this volume by price level as we see. Volume starts picking up, institutions are picking up shares, and we'll see the 10 EMA stay above the 30 and this bullish trend continue as phase 2, the markup period, starts. Newmont Mining, they mine gold among other things. Note the volume by price levels, a nice base here. phase 4, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 of the markdown. Now we're basing. We're looking like we're going to have some bullish action. Watch for a higher high, volume to pick up, and MACD get above the 0 line. Owens, Illinois, trying to break trend here as well. Keep an eye on this one. Slow still turning up. MACD's going positive, and we're watching volume. PPG's trying to change trend out of this markdown phase, build a base, and then move higher. Note the volume, slow stow, and MACD. Okay, so that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny. We are going to go outside and spend some time with the kids. I will post some IBD 50 stocks as well on the blog, so keep an eye out for that. Note we added a new section on the blog site, premium videos. You can read this at your leisure. We uploaded the opening range strategy, one part of 10 strategies that we outline in the book. If you bought the book, you can get a 50% discount on these videos. If you like to watch videos instead of reading, or if you like it as a complement to the book, this is very valuable for the trader. It simulates video mentoring sessions, the one-on-one classes that we have on a regular basis. I hope this helps. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you on Monday.